So let's dive into Sum 41. So you've mentioned you meet Derek around 1994. You guys go to high school together. You start a cover band together, and then
It
some.
wasn't a cover band. No, we
No,
weren't ever a cover band. No, that comes up a lot. I don't know why. I've always covered songs, but they were always originals. When I joined the Casper, so Derek's first band, they were all original songs. And I remember one of them was called Wet Cow, and I remember another one was called Jism. And my mom saw our first demo tape. I wish I still had it. And she saw the title Jism and was like, "What do you guys can't practice here anymore?" And I was like, "How do you know what Jism is?" And she's like, "I don't, but it sounds rude." So we had original songs, and like Derek wrote those songs, I think, because I don't think the bass player Grant wrote them. And then we started Sum 41, which was never a No Effects cover band, but we did cover No Effects songs, but those were original songs too.
I wonder why the internet thinks that Casper was a cover band.
It wasn't a cover band. I don't know. I don't. Maybe because there's no information about it really. I mean, it wasn't. I wish, like I said, I wish I had a demo or something and I could listen to it. But they're all lost.
So besides Derek, how do you meet the other members that would become the core of Sum 41?
They all we all just went to high school together, and we were all in different bands, but we would all hang out together. So Derek and I were in Sum 41. Dave was in a band called 747, which was a Rage Against the Machine cover band. And then Cone was in another band that I cannot remember what it was called, but we called it Lizard. They always changed the name. They always had a name change. And we would go to the city, all like the three different bands, and we'd go to the city and sign up for Battle of the Bands together. And we'd all try and get on the same bill, play together. And then we would rent a school bus and bring all our friends from Ajax and drive to the city the night of the show. And I remember for Cone, he was in a band, and at the time their name was Wizard. And when you go to these, I guess it was at a club called the Opera House, and they had tables set up on a specific day, and you'd go and sign your band up. And I guess the guy didn't hear Cone, so the guy said, "What's your band called?" It was loud. There's music playing, and Cone went, "Wizard." And the guy said, "Lizard?" And Cone was like, "No, Wizard." And the guy went, "Lizard Tongue." And so Cone's band was called Lizard Tongue for that show. Anyway, I think by then we were Sum 41, some 747, and Lizard Tongue played a show together. And then we had a guy in the band called John Marshall. He left, and we were like, we need to get Dave. Everybody knew that Brown Sound was the best guitar player. And we just tried to launch a charm offensive to get him from 747, which he was in with his cousin, Vaughn. And so we were trying to get him out of a family thing, but he was doing both for a while. And then Cone joined right before we got signed, maybe 6 months before we got signed. This guy that was in the band, Rich Roy, he crashed our van and then quit the band, I think, because he wanted to avoid any repercussions, insurance, whatever. And then we needed a bass player because by that time, like stuff was happening. We got Bonesy in there, and then he became the bass player, and then that was the lineup when we got signed.
And is it true, everyone that loves a band wants to know the story behind the band name. And man, I was a teenager when you guys got big. You guys were a part of the soundtrack of my teenage life. And I remember hearing rumors about the band name. Is it true that there was a name change 41 days into the summer? Is that Sum 41? Is that actually the truth?
It was something like that. I mean, I can't exactly remember the details. Vaguely remember being at almost like a slumber party, not a slumber party, but we are all sleeping over at somebody's house, and one of the guys was there, and we were just thinking of a million different opportunities. And we're like, we're not leaving this room until we come up with a name. And I think It wasn't me. Somebody suggested that and that logic, sorry, and that logic of 41 days into the summer. But I don't think, I think we were either, I don't know if we were thinking, okay, the first day of summer, June 21st, or the last day of school, whatever that is. I have no idea. But that is the name, that's where the name came from. But I don't know if it makes exact sense. But yeah, that's where it came from. Yeah.
And at the time, each member had a nickname. How did you get the 32 for Stevo 32?
I think it's a terrible nickname, but my last name is unpronounceable, so I still use that. I think it has to do with I was so bad at sports, like completely uncoordinated, couldn't land like Derek is actually really good at basketball. He was the free throw champion of the Durham region one year, or something like that, in a competition. Derek is good at basketball.
If he was seven
Um,
feet, he would have played in the NBA.
That's right. But, he's got that great long shot. And then we would play that, and I would just completely miss the thing. And we would play other stuff, and I was terrible. And so it was something like, in football, when you call blue 32, and then you hut the ball, I somehow became Stevo 32. And then it became my waist size, which was 32. And then as I got older, that didn't make sense anymore because I started to get a dad bod. But then I started doing pull-ups. Now I'm like Stevo 31 now, so like it's all I'm better now. But that's where the name initially came from. I wish it was a better nickname, but that's the one. That's the one I got.
So in 1998, you guys record a demo and you start sending this demo out to record labels. Is that how you caught the attention of the record label that signed you?
We sent out record labels. So we sent out demos to record labels, and we didn't hear anything.
That's a very normal
Crick,
story.
just crickets. And when you're young and you're full of anticipation and excitement, you send it out, you get nothing. And then somebody said, "You guys are always filming yourself doing stupid stuff on video cameras. Why don't you edit that stuff together? Pick the funniest stuff from those videos." This is decades before like YouTube is what it is today. We were purely recording those things for our own enjoyment. Like there was no outlet. But somebody said, "Why don't you edit something like that together? Put the music from the demo on that. Let's send that out." And that's what we did. And it it was it was immediate. I mean, every label is all of a sudden interested. I mean, it almost it became this buzz. It became this thing where people at record labels in the U.S. were saying, "Have you seen this video? These kids up in Canada? It's hilarious." And then once you get that momentum going, you get, I mean, we at one, so what ended up happening? We started meeting these people and we would play shows for them. I think the first guy who was interested was Rob Cavallo, who produced Dookie and American Idiot later. And he was an executive at um, Hollywood Records. He was the first one to fly up. And we did a show for him at the Alma Combo. And it was just him in the audience. It's just us on stage and him.
The
And we're
energy
like,
was electric from the crowd.
this was our one shot. And so we put on our budget arena show with fake pyro and like firecrackers. I would light my sticks on fire and light my cymbals on fire. Like we put on the whole and just to say something about that. One of the things that some 41 always did is that even if there was nobody there, we would, especially at the beginning, we would put on the best show for no one. We would, after we got signed, we'd do these festivals and we would be on before the gate was open. And we're like, there's a one security guard there. The show is for that guy. And so for anybody watching, that's a good philosophy. Like, don't be like, oh, there's nobody here. Why bother? It's like that guy's there, whether he's from a label or not. Do the show for that guy. Anyway, so Rob Cavallo was in the audience and we played for him. I remember my bass drum pedal broke almost right away. The spring broke. I'm like, it's over. Like our life and our career hinged on a spring. And there you go, like the cruel fate of the universe. But he loved us. He didn't notice. He didn't care. And we almost signed with them. It's a long story, but it all kind of fell apart. But not because of him, because of lawyers and stuff at that record label is what I think happened. But afterwards, we started getting so much interest from other labels that we, even if Hollywood Records gave us the best offer, we would have had to look at the other ones. So there were so many. We set up a residency every Wednesday, something like that. We would play at a club called Ted's Wrecking Yard, and every Wednesday, label people from America would fly up and watch. And we'd meet them, and some of them were super into it and got the band. Some of them didn't get the band and were only going because their boss was like, this is a thing that might be happening. Go check it out. And, we did that for, I don't know, a month or I can't remember how long. And then we finally whittled it down to the label that we ultimately signed with, which was Island Def Jam. And it was the best decision that we made because now, because I didn't know anything at the time and I still don't know anything. But I've since met people and know people who had so much promise and potential and it's just a slam dunk, but they signed to the wrong label and it just didn't go because the label didn't know how to market it, or even more nefarious in a way. The label secretly had another artist that they'd already invested a ton of money in. They knew this new potential artist might be a challenge. And so they would sign that person and then put them away in a box forever. And that happens more than you think. So fortunately for us, we signed. My throat's getting dry. Fortunately for us, we signed with the right label.
Isn't it kind of funny that you sent the same music to all these labels and they're not interested, but then they get a visual with it with this edited footage? And do you think it's just because now with the visual, they see that there's energy there, there's a chemistry there, that there's something maybe they can put their finger on a little easier?
Yeah, 100%. Because I don't think in the music business, you're always selling music, right? I think in the music business, you're using music to sell a personality that's marketable, right? And so if you just hear songs, it's really hard to say, okay, I can envision this. Um, but if you see this interaction between the guys and it just looks like fun and the music has potential, you're like, I can market that. That's something that we can sell as a major label. And that's great. That's the reason why you've got pop stars who are, marketable as a person and their music's shitty. It's because, they don't write very good songs or whatever, but somebody at a label somewhere is like, this person's a star, right? And so for us, uh, as soon as I'm sure they got a thousand. You would go to these guys' offices because we would fly to New York or LA and meet them at their offices, and you'd go in the office and they would be sitting behind a mountain of CDs and cassettes, and they would just sit there all day and put them on. Like the human mind like you're going through a stack of needles to find the right needle, and it makes it a hell of a lot easier if you're just like, I see this thing, I'm entertained from watching this video because they're not looking for just the song to entertain you. At least with our kind of band, they wanted a band with personality, and that's what we had too. So it was a combination of all those things.
So let's dive into the band's discography. So in 2000, you guys release Half Hour of Power. There's one single, Makes No Difference. The album eventually goes gold. What thoughts, memories, emotions come back to you now when you think back to that debut album or EP, however you want to say, that kickstarted the entire journey you've been on since then?
Well, it was exciting, and again, going back to having the right label, they didn't want us to just put out a song and then have a single and then forget about us. They wanted to set it up correctly and create a career that would be beneficial for the both of us. And so they said, don't put out your big, we're not going to dump all the money in this first EP. You guys need to go on the road and tour and stuff. So we got some money to make that EP, and those were the songs we had at the time. And we recorded our set at the time. That's like in sequential order. That's why there's a drum solo in the middle of the EP. Again, because it's ironic and silly and goofy and stuff, but also because that was just part of the set. So we went on tour a ton and we started to develop our chops a bit just by doing. And we went on our earliest tours. We're traveling around North America in a van. It was fun. It was the kind of thing that I don't necessarily think I'd want to do in my 40s, but when I think it was 18. I don't care. I was like, I'm in a van. This is awesome. But and so we had great times. And that was our first, we'd never really been anywhere. I think I went to British Columbia with my parents once when I was in the fifth grade. But we were in Vegas. We went to LA. We went to New York. We went to Medicine Hat. Like we went all over the place and saw North America, which is exciting when you're a kid just traveling around with your buddies. And so that was great and really fun. But I do remember when after that cycle was over, we went straight into recording All Killer No Filler. And I remember when we first, after the album was done, I remember when we first got a bus and we're like, oh, this is
Living the dream now.
really nice. Living the dream. We're in a bus. And that was like a big level up. But those early years in the van were fun.
So between the drum solo on 32 Ways to Die and you being on the album cover with a Nerf gun, was this EP created just to showcase your extraordinary talents? That's my question.
Well, I don't think I have extraordinary talents other than being a goofball, but no, I don't know. I think we just in those years in particular, we would just go with what we thought was funny, and I don't even know how that album cover came together, but somebody put it together, and it was the album cover for the demo that we sent out to the labels. And somehow we were like, this is such a good concept. Let's put it right on. Let's use it again. So I don't know how exactly, but I mean, for the first three records in particular, I think
You're
I'm on
on
the
all
cover
three
of all of them.
covers.
Yeah, in one way or the other. So I'm on Half Hour Power. I'm one of the faces in the
All Killer,
Polaroids
No
on All
Filler.
Killer, and it's me on the cover of Does This Look Infected? It was all just to be funny. Like we were just like, that's funny. Let's do that. That was the deciding factor for so many things early on.
So that first single, Makes No Difference, that's how most Canadians discovered the band, including myself. Do you remember the first time hearing your music on radio? Maybe it was before that with a demo or something, but that's how, we discovered you.
I don't, but I think and that could be wrong, but I think the one thing I do remember is when Makes No Difference got in a movie. And it was the first time a song of ours had ever been in a movie. And so we went to the movie, and the movie was Bring It On, which is like a cheerleader competition movie.
That was a big
I remember
movie. Maybe
that.
not your demographic, but that was a popular movie.
Yeah, I remember that. And I just remember, that's funny. The first thing I remember us being in was before all of this. We were in high school, and Derek somehow got the gig to sing a song for a commercial. And the commercial was a food fight for something. And they were going to sing Food, Glorious Food from Annie, Oliver Twist, some musical thing. Food, glorious food, hot something and butter, ba 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 ba. And they're like, okay, well, let's get everybody to do it. So Derek sang on it and played guitar, and I think I played the drums and Cone bass, Dave other guitar. So it was the first time we were in a commercial. Wish I had that commercial. I have no idea. And that was like one of the first times we were in a studio. Maybe because a lot of the demos early on were just recorded at home. So I remember that. That was funny. But yeah, the first time I remember hearing Makes No Difference in the World, I'm sure I would have heard it before, but the one that comes to mind is we were like, let's go see this movie. Our song is in it. So there you go.
So the song was also in the movie Van Wilder. It was in NHL 2002. It was in Big Shiny Tunes 5. What was it like having your song in those different pop culture mediums?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I didn't know about those ones. At the time, I don't think that's something we would have really thought about. It's just like, oh, okay, great. You're so busy with a million other things. You just know it's being played and the label's trying to get it out there and the like radio people and placements and stuff. They're just doing all the things that will help create a buzz. The whole point of that record was to just give us some experience touring, right? So when we went on tour, we had something to sell after the show because we weren't headlining, we were openers, right? And then the other thing was to just sort of lay a foundation across North America to set up All Killer. That was the whole point. And so the label had a long-term plan that we that's why we signed with them. We wanted that. We didn't want someone to be like, okay, you got one shot to write a hit right now, and if you screw it up, you're toast. They were like, listen, you're new. Let's come up with a plan and we'll do it right. And that's why I think we picked them. And that's really what Half Hour Power was.
And when you finished writing and recording that song, Makes No Difference, did you know you had something special, or did you just think, oh, it's just one of the songs on that EP?
Well, I think we had that. It was on that original demo from '98, maybe '97. So we were maybe it was written maybe in 1997, maybe. And we had there was another song called Summer, and then there was maybe a couple other ones. But Summer and Makes No Difference we felt were the best, catchy, almost like had single potential. And so that's probably why we picked Makes No Difference. We just had those two options. We recorded both of them and we said, okay, let's go with Makes No Difference. That sounds the most like a radio single. And so we just picked it and ran with that one. It got, decent play in it did okay in Canada. I'm not sure if it was played much in the States, but it didn't matter. The point was just to so when the next album came out, people were like, I've never heard of this band before. They're like, oh yeah, kind of those are those kids, right? That was the whole point.
I found a memorable review of the song that I wanted to share with you. So this
Oh,
from
please.
Oh, it's good. This is from Billboard magazine. They reviewed the song favorably, saying that it neatly walks a line between polished modern rock and a clever turn at accessible adult top 40. Charged up with grimacing guitars and a pace frantic enough to shake the perm loose from the intended audience's girlfriends. So that's from Billboard. I thought you'd find that entertaining.
That's that's surprisingly positive. I remember back in the day there weren't many positive reviews. But I also completely understand that. I mean, the kind of person who gets into working for Rolling Stone or whatever is not getting into it because of a new band like us. And sometimes these people would show up and they would be cool and then they would write the worst shit. And you'd be like, what? We were hanging out. Other times
I thought
they'd
we
be
were
a
boys.
dick. Yeah, we're buddies. Like you just hung out for 3 days and that's what you wrote. And then other times they'd be a dick and then they'd write something okay. And other times, they would just write they were a dick and they wrote awful things. But we didn't care again because it had that self-deprecating approach. We would run with it. Like if you wrote a bad review, we would put it on a t-shirt, right? I mean, it wasn't, and that's another thing. I mean, if you can laugh at yourself, especially in this industry, which is, it's hard to put yourself out there and then just get shit on. But if you can laugh with about it, you can, I think, get through the experience without getting, crushed and spat out.
I think your greatest fear as a new band is more dying in obscurity versus negative reviews. It's more like you want
Yeah.
some kind of a response, good or bad. It's just no response is what you dread.
No response is awful, but I know plenty of people who get really upset when they read a bad review. It's like, who cares? It's just some like the people who write those reviews are not your audience, right? Like that's what you have to realize. I guess before you needed to do that, Spin Magazine, whatever, like our fans, were they reading that? Like, did they really buy it? Or were they into something else? And now with the internet, you don't need any of that stuff. I'd rather do a podcast than talk to Rolling Stone. Like, I don't know if that person cares, you know? And so, um, yeah, I don't know. We never really took much stock in it, but we would always laugh if we got a bad. I'd rather read it. When you said you had a review, I would have been way happier if it was like 1 star. That's way funnier. Ah.
That's funny. So there's you guys had two music videos for that single. One was kind of the home footage that was edited, and then you had like a polished one where you guys have a house party and DMX shows up in this music video. And I'm gonna ask you about that in a second, but real quick, when I was at Metalworks, I was giving a middle-aged white woman and her daughter a tour of the studios, and we get to the DMX poster who had recorded some at least one album at Metalworks, and I'm telling them about DMX and the album and all that, and the lady was like, "Oh no, I know a lot about DMX." I'm thinking like, "Oh, that's not the right demographic," and she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm DMX's manager," and I'm like, "Oh man, I was just hyping DMX to DMX's manager." So I thought that was funny. Do you have anything you can share about the experience of having DMX show up in that music video?
I did like a history of that on my YouTube. But so we got, small budget and probably video fact money because we were on a Canadian independent in Canada. We were on an independent and we were on Universal Music everywhere else. So we do the video and it's just a house party kind of video, which is a fairly, I mean, it's been done a million times, but that's what we did. And somebody at the label, because we were on Island Def Jam, there were two sides of the same label. And someone said, wouldn't it be funny if DMX showed up in the video? And we were like, that would be funny, but how do you get DMX in a music video? They said, this is how you do it. We'll give him $30,000 cash in a briefcase and a bag of weed, and then he'll drive in on a forerunner or four-wheeler, one of those off-roading things, and he can keep that. We were like, that's what you want to do? They're like, yeah, it'd be great. Okay, so DMX, I think he was already in Canada. That's what they did. He's like 3 hours late. We didn't know if he was going to show up. Finally, he shows up with a huge entourage. And when DMX showed up, it became a DMX video. I tried to get back on set. And his security guard guys were like, you can't go in there. I'm like, I'm in the band. They're like, no, you're not. Anyway, so he's in the video for 2 seconds. And then that was it.
He drives in
And
through the hole that the car made, I think, right?
he drives in and afterwards we wanted to get a photo with him and we're all sitting on a car and the director of the video said he'd take the photo. And we're all smiling, and DMX was like, no smiling. You are not allowed to smile. And so we all had to look hard for DMX, which is not easy for us, especially in 2000. That was when we met him. That's the only time we met him. Yeah, I mean, it was cool that he did it. I thought it was hilarious that he made that much money and got all that stuff for appearing in the video for 2 seconds. And then he just left. It was wild.
And it costs another
Yeah.
30,000 for that picture. So
Yeah. And all that money could have probably gone in, like if we didn't get DMX, to maybe get a better video, but I don't think it matters. I think that is so random and weird that it's almost worth 30 grand.
Well, for some credibility for that video, I remember seeing it at the time and being like, holy shit, they have DMX in their video. So I know for me, that was like a shock factor. Like, man, these guys from Ajax have made it. So I think that
Yeah,
was worth
yeah.
30 grand anyways. Yeah.
Whatever the idea is, because like I said, looking back, the idea has been done a million times. There needs to be something different for just a hook, you know? And I guess at the time, the best idea that someone came up with was, yeah, DMX in the video. It's just random enough that people are still talking about it 20 years later, 25 years later. But because otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it at all. That's really the only funny, like the car going through the wall of that of the house was supposed to be like, that's crazy. But because nobody talks about that. That's not the crazy part. That would have been, that has been and would have been completely forgotten.
The
DMX,
real car crash
that's
is
the hook.
DMX attending. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So
Yeah,
I want to take you down a trip down memory lane here. So when I was 15, I went to one of my first music festivals. This was August 13th, 2000. And I'm 15 years old, and I go to the most incredible festival on planet Earth. And I'm going to share a picture here that is going to take you down memory lane. And here it is. So Somersault 2000, Our Lady Peace's tour, they handpicked all the bands that they wanted to tour with. And the opening band was Sum 41. And this
yeah.
is 2 months after you guys released your EP Half Hour of Power. And I remember being 15 and I was excited. This new band, Sum 41, Makes No Difference, had just gone on the radio. And you guys went on and it was awesome. And look at this lineup. This holds up so well. Smashing Pumpkins, Our Lady Peace, Foo Fighters, A Perfect Circle, Deftones, Treble Charger, Catherine Wheel, Eve 6, Finger 11, Sum 41. I mean, hasn't this
Hmm.
aged like a fine wine?
That's a funny one. I vaguely remember that show, and those tours, but yeah, I mean, that would have been pretty early on, actually. So how was the show? How did we do? Was anybody there? I
It
think
was
that
awesome.
would have
But
been
yeah,
one of
you
those.
you, you guys were on at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been one of those shows where we were playing as they opened the gates, and nobody was rushing,
Oh yeah, you got like five
Um,
songs. Yeah.
yeah, but Foo Fighters, not bad for your first, festival.
One thing that I found made you guys stand out as a band, what made you guys stand out from other punk bands or pop punk bands was your love of heavy metal, which came through even early on in your career with the demo and the EP. Did you guys love equally both of those genres, punk and metal? And did you know from the start that your sound would be an amalgamation of those two genres?
Well, like I said, we kind of discovered the punk stuff, the metal stuff, sort of by accident. But I mean, I don't know how we discovered the punk stuff either. I think more people were into that. No one that we knew was listening to Maiden. Everybody still listened to Metallica though. And Dave was a big metal guy. Before he was Dave Brown Sound, his name was Death Metal Dave. And that even though I don't think it was strictly death metal, but he was the metal guy. And yeah, I don't know if I think at the time we were more 90s punk kids in the sense that it was very specifically those SoCal Fat Records, Epitaph type of bands. Wasn't really 80s stuff. And the 70s, I mean, we listened to the Sex Pistols and the Clash. And then the metal stuff, we just started. It was like five bands. It was Metallica, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Motorhead, uh, Pantera, and a few other ones that I can't think of right now. But I mean that was kind of what we would listen to, and we were certainly at the time more into no effects in that sound. And then as we went onwards, and as we got better as musicians, and we were able to play, like the metal stuff does require a little bit more of a technical thing at times. Like the riffs are maybe a bit more, tight and chuggy. Um, so yeah, I mean, we were always into it. We were into all sorts of stuff. We used to cover, like, we would break into these sections and sing like a Boys to Men song as a joke. A lot of it too was funny because as much as I love 80s metal, and I do, like, it's ridiculous. I mean, the music videos are so silly, and we loved that campy aspect of it as well. Not all of it. Like Metallica's one video is so badass and still is, but some of the Maiden videos are kind of cheesy. Some of the Priest videos are cheesy. Some, like, they're just a product of the 80s. A lot of the videos are cheesy, right? So that's how we got into it, and that's the influence was there from the beginning. It started almost as a joke, and then as we were better musicians, we started writing songs that were serious sounding metal songs. But um, I mean, but we've been doing that forever. I mean, I still see comments where people are like, "Can you believe Sum 41 can play metal?" It's like, yeah, we've been doing that for 25 years. It is like there's not a huge leap between the fast, at least from a drumming perspective, between the fast punk beat and the fast metal beat, other than when you use the double bass. As far as the eighth notes and the backbeat on the, eighth notes on the right or cymbal or backbeat on the snare, and a lot of the fills, it's pretty much the same. So it's not a huge leap, but yeah, I mean, it was great. It's good to have different influences so that you're not just doing the same thing over and over and over again, unless you're AC/DC and you want to do the same thing over and over and over again because you're AC/DC and, that's what you do.
So one final thing about Half Hour of Power, and then we'll dive into the next album. All Music said the songs are well crafted and the hooks are catchy. So I got lots of great reviews here for you. So let's dive into All Killer No Filler. This comes out in 2001. This is the big major global breakthrough. Three singles: Fat Lip, In Too Deep, Motivation. It was on the Billboard 200 for almost a year. The album goes platinum in the US, three times platinum in Canada, sells over 3 million copies. It was the third best-selling album of the year in Canada by a Canadian artist. Could you ever have imagined when you started the band that just 5 years later you would have this much success with this album?
I think at the time when you're a young man or an old boy, it's probably more what I was, like, you're not necessarily thinking at the time, this is crazy. I mean, it's fun and it's exciting and things are happening. You can feel the momentum, but you don't have the world and life experience to compare it to an alternate reality. And I basically graduated high school, and then 6 months later, we were signed to a major label. So, like, I just kind of started doing that, and it just seemed as if it was something that was happening. And this is crazy, but this is happening. It wasn't until much later, when I was older, looking back and being like, that's bananas. Like, we saw No Effects at 1996 Warped Tour. We're like, let's start a No Effects like kind of band. And then by 2000, we're signed to a major label and we start playing Warped Tour. I think we did 2 weeks or something. And then by 2001, we do the whole tour and we're hanging out with No Effects. Like, that time window is 4 years or something. Like, it was really compressed, but it seemed normal at the time. It wasn't until I got older and I started looking back and going like, that's actually kind of crazy that happened. The amount of things that need to go right that are beyond your control. You could have the songs, you could have the personality, you could have the chops on your instrument, all that. You could have a great recording and a good record. But especially at the time, when I kept saying this a couple of times now, there was no outlet like the internet where you could just upload it to YouTube and people find it. And several artists that we have now have started that way. I think Billie Eilish, massive. She was like posted stuff on YouTube, was discovered that way. So, but at the time, you needed label people and you needed radio people and you needed all these other things to click in like a domino. And I mean, Murphy's Law dictates that it's not going to work. Something will go wrong. But for us, it didn't. It's crazy. Like, I don't know how it happened. I have no clue how the external forces in the universe allowed it to happen, but they did.
So almost no human being will ever experience that level of success. Can you share what your life was like at the very peak of that album?
I mean, I don't think anybody would look at that and go, that is a David Lee Roth equivalent of rock stardom. We weren't driving around in a Rolls Royce full of strippers. Like it wasn't like that, you know. We were a bunch of dudes on a bus. And I think at the time we were like, we're on a bus. This is awesome. If I go on a bus at 43, I'm like, it smells like farts in here. You know, like your perspective changes. What I mean, the thing that was exciting wasn't so much like we're making a ton of money or any of that. And there were times, especially after Interview came out, where we were just getting checks. It was like, this is great. But the thing that was exciting is just dashing around the world. You know, we need to be in Singapore in 24 hours. How are we going to get there? The day after, we need to be in Amsterdam. I got to see the world many times over, and it was paid for by, you know, like by the band was funding it, the label was funding it. I was getting paid to do it. You're playing, we were headlining shows, so people are coming to see you and they're excited to meet you. That was the best part. Like the exposure to the world, it was cool. And being able, you know, like to be in Tokyo and kind of know how to get around when you're a kid from Ajax. And for the longest time, you know, our universe was that big. And then it expanded across the globe. That is a unique experience that few people get to have, and I feel really lucky to been able to do that. That was the best part for me. Like that lifestyle is fun.
Do you remember receiving the news that the album had gone gold, then platinum, then multi-platinum?
No, I we must have gone to the label in New York and they would have presented us with the gold. I have the gold records. The gold record I think is at my nephew's house in Canada. The platinum record is somewhere in this room, and the like the three platinum record is at my other nephew's house. Um, and Yeah, I don't remember receiving those. I definitely don't remember receiving the three platinum one. That would have came later. There would have been a little, you know, delivery at the label in New York, and you know, and then you go, "This is awesome." I remember we were really picky though because you know the gold record is what you think in your head, a gold record, but people don't play records anymore. And so I remember they gave us a gold CD, and we were like, I don't want that. I want the record. So the label, to their credit, you know, gave us a gold record. Here's the thing about gold records, and I think we discovered this at Metalworks. If you take one of them off out of the frame and you flip it over, it's just a spray painted record. I think we did that, and it was like UB40 or something on the other side. Like not even the band's record. They just have a stock of like they go to Salvation Army or something and get,
Yeah, this can
you
be a
know, a cheap.
coaster or it can be a gold plaque for somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Like you get a Herb Alpert record, and one side of it needs to become gold now. So that's a record that's gone, I don't know, probably 10 billion. I don't even know how many albums Herb Alpert has sold. I was telling my son when he was getting into vinyl, I said, you can go to any record store in the world, like not a record store, like a Goodwill, Salvation Army, St. Vincent de Paul, whatever. There will be a Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass Band record for sale. Doesn't matter where you are. That guy sold a lot of records.
If you're into books, the equivalent is if you go to any Salvation Army or used store, there's 1,000 copies of the Da Vinci Code. That's like the
Yeah.
equivalent. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not into those kinds of books, so I haven't read that one. But yeah, that one and what's that other one? The Shades of Grey book, I'm sure is in there. Like these
Yeah.
fad books that come around. But
Twilight and Harry
anyway, yeah,
Potter. Yeah.
yeah, Twilight, the pulp stuff. Anyway, so that's I don't really remember exactly getting the records. The thing I remember about that record in particular is working with the producer Jerry Finn, who produced Blink, Enema of the States, and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket, and a couple more. He was the engineer on Dookie. He produced Rancid Out Come the Wolves, which was another of our favorite records. And we picked him, like he said he would do it. We picked him, and he was just a great guy. We really loved him, and he was really fun to work, like hilarious. I like funny people. He's funny. He was funny. He passed away, unfortunately, very young. But we loved Jerry, and that experience working with him was awesome. So that's my favorite memory of recording that record, which we did at Metalworks, was working with him.
What do you think made him so great at what he did? I mean, he made some of the most iconic albums of all time.
He was a great engineer, so because of the Green Day stuff and everything he did before, so he could make it sound good. But his approach to producing was like, when you might want to fix something at home or something like that. We know this guy who's he's like an older guy that that we've become friends with, and we would say, "Oh, this broke at the house. We need to hire an electrician or something to come." And he knows a lot about houses. He'd be like, "Oh, why don't you go dig a trench over there and tell me what you see?" And then we dig the trench and you see, "Oh, the conduit's corroded." He's like, "Oh, why don't you go to Home Depot and buy just this section of conduit?" You go, "Okay." So you go and you buy it. And then you bring it back. He's like, "Well, why don't you just take that wire and slide it through the conduit?" Okay, you do that. And he goes, "Why don't you just plug it back in again?" And all of a sudden it works. And you fixed it yourself, right? You didn't have to call the electrician. And Jerry was kind of like that. Like he wouldn't say, "Do this, do that." He would make little suggestions that you could get to where he wanted you to go on your own. And that's something I remember, and that's what I liked about him. As far as his approach to producing, it was a light touch, but he was always right. Like he'd be like, "This needs this. Like maybe do that. Like try something like this. Like what do you think?" And then you'd get there, and you'd be like, "That's awesome." So I remember that. That's sort of how I would. That's what I remember, at least with me. In songwriting, when we were doing pre-pro, we would get together and work on songs, and then he would come and sit on a chair and with a notepad and just watch, and he would just make notes. And then that's what I mean. Like he would help you get to where he knew you wanted to be, but you maybe didn't know how to get there. And then, other than that, just he's fun to hang out with. I mean, so much of, you know, it's like getting a realtor. You sit in the car with this person all the time because you're going around looking at houses. You want somebody who's not annoying. You're sitting in the studio with a guy for months. You want somebody who's not annoying. He's entertaining. He was so funny. And a lot of the like jokes and stuff that came about, even the pain for pleasure thing in some ways was like a riff off of a Mr. Show sketch. Mr. Show with Bob David and Bob Odenkirk and David Cross. Like that kind of came from a Mr. Show sketch, and Jerry introduced us to that. So there was like a big brother aspect to him, like a cooler older brother saying like, "Check this out. This is the cool thing." So that was cool. I loved him.
So I'm going to share a few accolades from the singles, and then I have a question about the singles. So Fat Lip went double platinum, went to #1 on the Billboard Alternative Airplay charts in the US. The music video topped MTV's Total Request Live and Much Music's Countdown. Then with In Too Deep, 2 times platinum, also went to #1 on Much Music. You guys made some really memorable music videos for the 3 singles, including Motivation as well. Is there anything you can share about those 3 music videos? Any story that comes to mind that you think our audience would get a kick out of?
Well, looking back, I would say for me, one of the things I'm most proud of, at least just for my involvement in the band, were those early videos. We, again, luckily just made the right connection with the right person who had the right sense of humor at the perfect time. The Makes No Difference video was cool. It was our first experience, but we needed something else for like they didn't have a big budget. The label's like, "Okay, this is the main album. This is your shot. You have to like, let's get a single going. Like, write a hit song and we will push it. Here's the money. What do you want to do?" And they asked us who we wanted to direct the video, and we had no idea. Like the only director at the time I think I knew was Spike Jones, just because of the Beastie Boys, and like he wasn't going to do it. And so they asked us, were there any music videos that we liked? And we said, well, we like that Nelly Country Grammar video, which is
Such a
hip hop
random
in St.
reference.
Louis. Completely weird, but we liked the energy of it. We liked the colors in it. We liked just the vibe of it. And they said, well, why do you meet that guy? And so his name was Mark Klassfeld. And we go to Vegas. We were in Vegas playing a show, and he was there. Like we met him. And we didn't know what to expect, but he's a very clean cut, sort of like he looks like Jean-Claude Van Damme and like super clean cut, preppy looking guy. It was not what we were expecting. And he kind of pitched like a punk version of that sort of documentary style type of video, just with crazy stuff happening while we perform. And we said, okay, that's fun. And he said, where do you want to shoot the video? Like, do you want to shoot it in Canada? And I think we said, no, we have to shoot it in Pomona, California. And it was like, why? At the time, that was the only place that we had a solid fan base where we could say Sum 41 is going to shoot a video and kids would go. Because while we were touring and we were in the van and we were opening for bands like Face to Face or whatever, we played one show at this club called the Glass House, and it just like grassroots naturally kicked off. And our agent was like, you guys can go and play at the Glass House by yourself. Like you can headline that venue. It's like 800 people or something. We were like, we can? Like, if we shot it in Toronto, half the like it would be like makes no difference. Half the people there are our friends from high school, you know. And so we shot it in Pomona, and it just had the right look. Even though we're not a California band, it looked like a California punk band. Everybody looked cool. It looked fun. And then all the things that happened were just sort of random ideas that Klassfeld came up with, or things that happened spontaneously in the moment. And then the pain for pleasure thing at the end, we said, can we shoot a video for our heavy metal bands? Like, and he's like, we can do one or two takes. Like because there was a 2-day shoot. This was at the end of the second day. Everybody's exhausted. So we shot, I don't know, one take, maybe two. And then that was the one that ended up as a tag on the back of the video. And then at the beginning of the video, it starts with that a cappella hip hop thing that was just a random idea. He was like, there's a guy in the convenience store right there. You guys should go rap in front of him. We're like, okay. So we go and do that. And then that became the beginning of the video. So when it went to MTV, it started blowing up. The song was blowing up on the radio, and MTV was playing the whole thing, the intro, the video, and the Pain for Pleasure thing. And this is when TRL was Carson Daly, you know, what do you call it? Times Square. And it was blowing. It was like us and Christina Aguilera, or us and the Backstreet Boys, you know, going head to head for number one on TRL, which is a huge deal. But, and you know this, like there was no MTV in Canada when we were growing up. The first time we ever saw MTV is when we were on MTV. And so like, even though it was like, people were like, this is like massive. We were like, oh, cool. Like, yeah, great. You know,
It was all much
good
music
job.
for us, right? In
Yeah,
Canada.
much music is, you know, is what we knew and grew up with. So it didn't have that same, like we obviously knew about it, like Ferris Bueller's Day Off is that whole montage at the beginning where like we were exposed to the idea, but it was this forbidden media, not allowed in Canada. So that was funny. That was funny that we were on there. So then Into Deep, we stuck with Klassfeld, and it was our A&R guy, Louis Largent, who came up with the idea. He said, what if you do a parody of Back to School, which is a Rodney Dangerfield movie from the 80s? And then he looked at me and he goes, you're doing the Triple Lindy. And I was like, okay. And even though In Too Deep isn't my favorite song, like now I recognize it's a very well constructed song. It's a hit pop song. But I didn't listen to pop songs like that so much, but I love the video. I love the video. It might be our best video. But again, that relationship with Klassfeld and his ability to get the jokes, and he's funny, and the references in there, Slash coming out of the water and the Estranged video, and we have Dave do that out of the pool. I mean, it's got some great moments, and it just looks like fun. It really captures the early 2000s sort of pop punk scene. Like it's bright and sunny and light and funny. Whereas the origin of punk is dark and gritty and angry. It's just such a contrast. But yeah, the video was hilarious and it is still a classic and holds up. And I would argue that that song, there are certain songs that I think might not have had the same lasting power if the video wasn't as good. Because if a kid discovering Sum 41 now, who's 13 or something, goes on YouTube and watches that video, it's not like they're watching an older video from the 80s or something where you go, "Oh, this doesn't look like it still looks current. It still looks like it could have been made now," which I think will help give the song a lasting life. And it still captures the whole feeling and vibe of the whole thing. And so the next video was makes no wait what's it
Motivation.
called? Motivation. That video we switched to a different director. That was Joseph Kahn, who directed all the Limp Bizkit videos and stuff. And that was not my favorite video. I got to do a video on my YouTube about that one. I mean, it was just a performance video. It's cool. It's energetic, but like I said, it didn't have that hook. Like it didn't have that something that made it a classic, in my opinion. Whereas there's 5 videos, in my opinion, that are just classics. And you can look back and they'll go toe to toe with any other video and people can watch it. And even if they don't like the band, they're like, okay, that was pretty good.
So In Too Deep is still the band's most popular song on Spotify, 616 million plays, which is an absurd number. Is it true that you wrote Pain for Pleasure in 10 minutes while sitting on the toilet? Is this real? Is this a real thing?
Yeah, well, yeah, that was my songwriting contribution. They'd already written, okay, on the Half Hour Power, there are 2 instrumental Maiden type galloping Maiden songs. And then we were recording another instrumental song for All Killer that, I think I didn't write the music, but we were recording it. And Dave had named it Pain for Pleasure. And as we were listening to it in the control room, sort of the mix, the rough mix, I thought, this is funny if I wrote lyrics. And so I went to the bathroom and just wrote down the first thing that came to mind using Dave's line of Pain for Pleasure. And I came back into the room and just started singing it. I didn't say I've written lyric. I just started singing it because I thought it would be funny. And I wasn't trying to record it. I just was like, this will be hilarious. And then they said, we have to record those lyrics. And I went into the vocal booth, recorded the lyrics. Dave does that really high scream at the end. That's him, because he can do that. And that's how that one came about. So again, it was a spontaneous joke that we ran with because we were like, that's hilarious. Let's put it on there. And then that's the ending of the album. The beginning of the album has an Iron Maiden intro that's like Number of the Beast, which I think is written by, it's not Vincent Price, because that's he does Thriller. It's something like that. But anyway, we said let's start the album with something like that. So I wrote a little sort of rhyming poem, I guess, and that is read by Louis Largent, who came up with the In Too Deep concept. Came up with a ton of concepts. Lewis was hilarious. Let me just jump back real quick. While we're doing those showcases at Ted's Wrecking Yard for the labels, we narrowed it down to 2 labels. Can't remember the name of the one label. It was Island Def Jam and not Atlantic, but something like that. Doesn't matter. And we said into the Derek said into the audience, who, because we had trampolines on the stage and the guys would jump on those. And Derek said, whoever comes up on stage and bounces on the trampoline in this next song, that's the label we're going to sign with. And Lewis walked up, gave everybody the finger, and started bouncing on the trampoline. And the president of the other label was there. And we found out after he turned to somebody and said, if that guy worked for me, I'd fire him. And so we signed with Lewis, and the other agent was Rob Stevenson. He was great, went on to have an amazing career. Fall Out Boy, The Killers, like tons of huge bands. But Lewis, jumped on the trampoline. That's all. And I was like, we were like, let's sign with them. And again, can you imagine if we signed with the other label where the mentality of the president was, if you do something like that, I'll fire you? When so much of the stuff we did was ridiculous. The president of the label of Island Def Jam was Leor Cohen, who was Beastie Boys manager. So he got it.
So in support of the album, you guys toured in the US and Canada with Goldfinger, and I reached out to another iconic drummer, and I have some kind words sent in from Goldfinger drummer Darren Pfeiffer. And this is what he
Love
has to
Dan
say.
Pfeiffer.
He says, me and Steve have been around the world together as Goldfinger and Sum 41 shared many an international stage. So many incredible memories and stories, and lots of mutual love and admiration. He's one of a kind, and I'm happy to call him a friend. That's from Darren Pfeiffer.
Oh, that's very sweet. He's a lovely guy, man. He's hilarious. He's this big, giant dude. I got two opinions on this because in one way I completely don't approve because Conan O'Brien was my favorite host of a late night talk show. But Goldfinger went on the Conan show and Darren picked Conan up and held him over his head and then dropped Conan. And I was just like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. Needless to say, they never went back. But that's my memory. That's the kind of guy Darren is. So there you go. I can't believe he did that.
One final thing about All Killer No Filler, and we'll move on to the next album. I got a little bit of acclaim. So Top40.com ranked the album as the 9th greatest pop punk album of all time. The album was included in Rock Sound's 101 Modern Classics list at number 46, and the album was included at number 11 on Rock Sound's 51 most essential pop punk albums of all time. So let's move on. 2002, you guys released the album Does This Look Infected? 3 singles, Still Waiting, The Hell Song, and Over My Head, Better Off Dead. Still Waiting goes platinum, The Hell Song goes gold. The album sells over 4.5 million copies. Did you guys feel a ton of pressure trying to follow up the previous album that was insanely successful?
I think so, because there was no break. We went straight from all Killer and touring pretty hard for a year and then straight into that album. It was and it was a bit of a departure too because we didn't want, I think the label was like, do more Into Deeps, but we didn't want to. So we were like, no, we want to go in a different direction. And I vaguely remember showing somebody Still Waiting and they're like, what are you doing?
This is heavier and more aggressive, right?
Heavier, more raw, and I mean it's a more badass song, that's for sure, but it doesn't sound like the other ones so much, but that's what we did. Still Waiting might be one of my favorite songs in the video. I think that's my other favorite video. Hell Song, great song. I don't like the song quite as much, but I love the video. The idea for the video is hilarious. 2 Glassfeld videos. So Into Deep, Fat Lip, Still Waiting, and Hell Song, all Mark Glassfeld. The Hell Song music video is hysterically funny. I mean, it's so ridiculously funny, and it's us playing with dolls, and that's what he sent as the treatment. He didn't, because normally they write a treatment on it, send you that. He just sent us a VHS while we were on tour, and it was just him off screen, but you could see his hands playing with dolls. And he was like, what if the whole video is just hands playing with dolls? And we're like, that's amazing. And I think that one was nominated for an MTV award. Um, I think that album was one of those things where it was stressful. It was done kind of in a rush. There were production problems and whatever. But that is my favorite Sum 41 record. That's the one I like. It's the closest one to the kind of music that I listen to. Um, you know, but in I just think that's a good one, and it's short and sweet. It's 30 minutes, I think. Each song's kind of a banger, and yeah, I mean, I'm proud of that one. It was a level up in musicianship. I think it's got great lyrics and great choruses and melodies. I think the guitar playing is great, bass, all that. It's a great record. I think it's cool. It's not as big or as popular as All Killer, but I don't care. I listened to all of them a few months ago and did a video about that. And All Killer was my fourth favorite, So
I watched the
but
video.
that's my
I remember you said
yeah.
all killer, a little filler, something like
There's
that.
a little bit of filler, a little bit of filler. In hindsight, but I'm proud of that one as well. I just like Does This Look Affected better. And then those tours were great. It was a lot of fun, but I got to admit, it's kind of a blur. I don't fully remember everything in detail.
Well, this is three albums in 3 years. Like it's probably just a hot mess of
Yeah, we were
activity.
partying and drinking and flying all over the place. You're in a different city every day. I mean, it all sort of morphs into one amorphous memory.
And why is the Hell song called the Hell song? So I know the lyrics, everybody's got their problems. So is it everyone with their problems are going through hell? Is that why the Hell song or?
Well, the song's about how a friend of ours contracted HIV. And so, I mean, Derek wrote the song. So I think the title might sort of describe the experience of what that was like. I think. I don't know the actual answer. That's what I'm guessing. Um, but again, in true, or at least early Sum 41 fashion, we have this extremely heavy song and we do a completely ridiculous video. Um,
Is
but
that a
I
way
would
to
say if you,
balance out the two? Like a perfect
I
kind of
just,
middle ground?
not everybody can pull it off, but we could. And I just think if we did the serious video, I don't think people will be watching the video anymore because it doesn't have that like. Have you seen that video? Like you always need something where they're like, "Have you seen that? What is that?" And it's not like, "Have you seen that?" It's so shocking and base. Like it's actually this hilarious, self-deprecating, um, relatable concept because we made videos like that before we were signed. We would make stop motion music videos and stuff like that. I think a lot of people did that. So it felt like something that was hooky, funny, and also relatable. That's way better than a literal interpretation of the lyrics presented as a video. That would be boring. No one would watch it.
I just remembered now the everybody's got their problems and it's Lars with Napster in the
Yeah.
video. I just remember that now that the first time I saw that, remember thinking like that's so funny that you guys actually touched on that, which is like a faux pas for musicians.
If you watch the video and you were around then, it's like a snapshot of early 2000s culture in so many ways. And that was what it needed to be. It couldn't just be random doll playing. Beneath the dolls, we're commenting on all these things that were happening in popular culture all the time. And there's tons of them. Klassfeld came up with most of them. We came up with our own and would send him ideas, and he would go, "Oh, that's a good one." And we kind of collaborated together. And it's funny. It's great. It's clever, and you want that. You want that. I think it helps if you just can find something that sets it apart.
So we have a fan question sent in. This is from Mike Lalonde. And his question is, what do you remember from the Pepsi Challenge tour? That was my first real concert experience ever. So I don't know when the Pepsi Challenge tour was. Hopefully this rings a bell for you.
I remember vaguely being uncomfortable about doing a Pepsi challenge tour. I don't know why we were like, oh, really? Do you want Pepsi involved and like a big sponsor or whatever? But then at the end of the day, we are like, yeah, who cares? Let's just do it. I don't care. So that's all I remember. Is that at the time we still were like, what'll that do to our credibility? And then I think we were like, wait a minute, we don't have any credibility. And so you kind of have to do those things to help fund the tour. And they would set up a little booth and put up their weird, like they were advertising something like other than just Pepsi, it was some kind of Pepsi. And we were playing at the Rogers Arena or whatever anyway. So I don't know, it didn't matter. We would do stuff like that. It always felt a bit uncomfortable, but that's what I remember. Other than that, I don't remember the shows. I remember they were good. It was fun, but I remember, there's that like sort of friction against the marketing opportunities that happens from time to time.
Around that album, you guys win your first Juno Award for Group of the Year. For those listening from outside of Canada, the Junos are the equivalent of the Grammys here. What did that first Juno Award win mean to you? Just knowing that your country acknowledges your hard work and your talent.
Well, it's nice to win. My memory is that we kept losing all the time. So we won that one and then we just kept losing to
I
Nickelback.
thought I wouldn't mention all the nominations before that.
Yeah, it's fine. We at one
I
point,
came in
Chad
with just the
Kroger.
win here. Yeah.
No, forget that's not funny. So then, so Chad Kroger kept getting these awards. This is one thing I remember about losing. And then he would go, I just want to share this award with our brothers in Sub 41. And at one point, I was like, you don't have to do that. Like, you have that. You won that one. We've got this one. We got one over here. Um, I'm not a big award guy, so the thing I remember more about the Junos in those days was that everybody used to show up in a black car or a black SUV. And we were like, and then what you would do is you would sit in the car in a long queue of cars waiting for your black car to show up on the red carpet. And we were like, this is dumb. Like, what's something fun we could do? And so we kept thinking of fun ideas and ways to show up to the Junos or whatever award show we were going to. One time we went on bikes. One time we just walked up. One time we went in a rickshaw. One time we in for the MTV 20th anniversary we went in a Gremlin, like those cars from the 70s that used to explode. And so we would always try and find a stupid way to show up at the award show because again, they're silly. They're silly events, right? And so we would sort of embrace the silliness. And those are my favorite memories of those award shows is showing up in like a ridiculous clown car, tumbling out, and then you do the red carpet, and then you go in and you have to sit through this thing, and then afterwards you go get drunk with Burton Cummings.
Final two things about this album. It was number 28 on Rock Sound's list of the 51 most essential pop punk albums of all time. And Ultimate Guitar described the album as a fantastic example of merging pop punk with thrash and alt metal, saying the band perfected the art of combining punk rock and metal. Now let's dive into the album Chuck from 2004. Three singles were All to Blame, Pieces, and Some Say. These singles had a lot of success in Canada, the United States, other countries. The album, again, sells over 5 million copies. It was in the top 10 on the Billboard Top 200. So at the time, it was the band's highest charting album in the US. So this is three massive albums in a row that have sold between 3 and 5 million copies globally. At this point, did you guys feel like you could do no wrong? Just any album you put out is going to sell 3 to 5 million and have a ton of success.
Yeah, I don't know if those numbers are correct. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember Chuck selling that many. I don't know. But I don't think that's what we were necessarily into. We thought of ourselves as like a live band. So what we cared about most was that there were people at the shows. Um, that is the thing that I don't know if we were overthinking it necessarily. I just think we wanted to put out what we thought was cool, and we still just wanted to put on good shows. Album sales is great, but you have to sell a hell of a lot of them to start paying, making the label makes the money first, right? So we made money and stuff on tour, and that's what we enjoyed doing. And so as long as we were selling out shows, that's what made us happy. That album is heavier in many ways. It's got a couple slow songs on it, pieces. Some say there's another one, which I don't remember what it's called. And I mean, I love that record too. That was my second pick for my favorite in my favorite albums. Um, it was fun. We did some great tours with other bands. The video for "We're All to Blame" is the last classic Klassfeld video. I think that was my idea because I was watching The Running Man of all movies, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there's a like a sort of sequent danced jazz hands intro to the game show that he's playing. And I thought, oh, that could be a funny video, and sent it to the band, and then we sent it to Klassfeld, and he turned it into Solid Gold, which was a big show in the '80s. It's just a parody of Solid Gold. Hilarious video, and again, very serious subject matter with a ridiculous video, which is that dichotomy. If you can pull it off, is fun. So that's probably my favorite thing from that record is "We're All to Blame," the video. Yeah, that was a good one.
Can you quickly share the story behind the name of the album? So this is named after Chuck Peltier. This is a
No, no,
UN
no,
peacekeeper.
no, not even that. He was okay. So I just did an interview with Chuck on my YouTube. It's because he's never really talked about his version of the story, and I wanted him to. But this is the short version of the story. If you want the long version, people can go and watch the video. But
What's your
basically,
YouTube for our listeners to go check out?
Stevo 32 drums. That's it. And so he so okay, we were approached by a aid group called War Child Canada, and they said, we'd love to work with you. We're doing this documentary series, like they've already done a few, called Musicians in the War Zone. They did one with Chantal Kraviatzik and Rain Maida, two singers from Canada. They did one with the Rascals. They did one with David Usher, another Canadian singer. And they said, we'd love to work with you guys. And we said, okay. So we met them. They sort of told us what the idea was. Basically, we'd like for you to go to a war zone in the world. Say, there'll be a ceasefire or whatever, but someplace in the world where you can bring light to a situation that's being ignored by the media. And so we said, sure, why not? And so they gave us a list of places to go, and they wanted us to consider going to the Congo, which up until that time, I mean, I don't know if I'd spent a terrible, like I didn't spend a lot of my time thinking about what was going on in the Congo, like most people. And so so we go there. We found it interesting because the thing that we found compelling, the hook for us for the Congo, was that there's all these sort of warlords and stuff. There's a civil war but they're all fighting over access to these mines where they mine this metal called coltan, which is extracted and then sent to factories in China, in Asia, and where they develop microchips and batteries and all the things that we use in. At the time, I think the most futuristic toy we had was a BlackBerry, but computers and video game consoles and things like that. You need this metal, and the largest deposits of it are in this region of the Congo, which is, a war zone. And so we thought the connection between this, very unsafe, like literally a guy in the ground digging a rock out of the ground, and then it's sent to the developed world and create these supercomputers. We thought that connection was interesting, and so we went. While we were there, the fighting, which wasn't supposed to happen, started happening, and we got stuck in between a battle between all these warring militias and this guy, Canadian guy who was staying at the hotel working for the UN. He was ex-military guy, but working as a UN volunteer, as a camp manager. He sort of stepped up and helped orchestrate a evacuation from our hotel to the UN compound. It's a crazy story, and it's cool hearing his perspective. But the way he was able to convince these guys to come get us involves a box of cigars. So people should go watch that. But that was this experience, and I remember Derek and we're in the hotel. Like people are getting killed. Like there's bombs going off.
There's
It was
legit
insane.
gunfire happening.
The entire time there's machine guns and rocket propelled grenades. And then what really got scary was when they started shooting mortar rounds. So mortar, they shoot it out of a tube, and it has an arc, and then it blows up. And we were right where it was blowing up. And one of them, we got very close to the hotel. We were like, we need to leave now. Like, we need to go now. And so Chuck got us out of there. And we said, before we did that, we were like, Chuck, if you get us out of this, we're naming the album after you. And he did. And so that's why it's called Chuck.
That's intense. That's a
Yeah,
crazy story.
I mean, it gets crazier. I mean, there's other things that happened, and just how we got ourselves into that situation is wild. But it's definitely up there for one of the crazier. Because listen, like before, I was talking about going to all these different places in the world, and you're going to Amsterdam and Tokyo and Sydney and wherever, and those are all great destinations that people save up their money to go on a vacation to. So it gives you a very myopic view of what the world is like. It's like everywhere is a developed country, and it's not. And so going to a place like the Congo, which the eastern region of the Congo is very close to being a failed state, you can see how bad it can get and what the actual default condition of society is. Like for the vast period of society, right? That's kind of what it is most of the time, is a shit show. And we all live in these, like we got healthcare and warm water, clean water, food at the grocery store. No one's coming to kill us today. And so you take it for granted and forget that that's actually what it's really like for a lot of people. And that was a really eye-opening experience.
So the album named after your hero Chuck wins Rock Album of the Year at the Junos. So screw you, Chad Kroger, you got that one. And about the album, Exclaim said musically, the band has never sounded more determined or cohesive. And lyrically, the album also advances the case for these guys as strong songwriters. So let's dive into Underclass Hero. This comes out in 2007. 3 singles, their top 10 singles. With Me goes gold in the US. The album goes to #1 in Canada, #7 in the US. So that's the band's highest charting album. The album goes gold in Canada, sells over 1 million copies globally. Yet, despite all that, this is your least favorite Sum 41 album. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I just don't really like
Or
that
we can
one.
ignore this
I
album,
mean,
whatever you want.
no. I mean, I'll talk about it. It's just I'm not like listening back when I listen to at least my contributions to the band in context. When I compare them, this one's my least favorite. It was a pivot back to a more poppy sound. And I don't know, there were just other things happening. Dave left the band. I mean, some of the positive things, like I love Dave and I think he's awesome, but he left and then Tom joined from Gob. So Tom from the lead singer of Gob, who were huge fans of Gob. And then we used to tour with them all the time. We would open for them very early on. And then when we got successful, we brought like so many tours were with Gob. And Tom joined the band and he's became a close friend and he's an awesome guy and a great musician and a great songwriter. And just, it was a real treat getting to know him on that more intimate level where you're now in a band together. That was great. I'm not a huge fan of the songs. Like that's just my own personal feeling. Um, but I know a lot of people love that record, and I don't want to, shit on their parade or yuck their yum or whatever. It's not for me, that one. Um, and none of the singles do it for me.
So I'm going to share two positive reviews and then we'll talk about your final album with the band. So Pop Matters wrote that the way Underclass Hero layers pianos, acoustic guitars, vocal harmonies, and ambient synthesizers easily makes it Sum 41's prettiest sounding record to date. And then the AV Club gave the album a positive review, calling it the band's smartest and most mature sounding album yet. So let's dive into 2011.
Well, hold on. Hold on,
Yeah,
hold on. Before you
yeah,
move on,
yeah.
I will say that Derek produced Underclass, I think by himself, and I will say it sounds really good. Like the production is
It's
good.
very clean,
Um,
very
it's
polished. Yeah.
clean. It's great drum sounds, guitar, everything sounds great. Vocals, different harmonies, that's great. So I don't want to just shit on it and be like, this is sucks, because it doesn't. It's just my personal taste. Those songs don't resonate with me. Even the song With Me doesn't resonate with me. And I directed the music video, but I recently watched that video. And I mean, I directed it. It was my concept. It doesn't hold a candle to the big five that I love. Into Deep Fat Lips, Still Waiting, Hell Song, We're All to Blame. It's not that. Um, but it was just because you do something and in the end you don't like it doesn't mean that it didn't help you grow in a different way. And it doesn't matter. You can try stuff, and if they don't work out, who cares? Just do something else. At the time, maybe there's a couple songs, but not really. I mean, even what's the other? No, there was another single you forgot to mention.
So Underclass Hero, Walking Disaster, and With Me.
That one, Walking Disaster. Did you say Walking Disaster?
So I just said there was three singles. I didn't mention what they were.
Oh, okay. So yeah, Walking Disaster is the second one. And again, that wasn't with the first one we did. So me and Classfeld co-directed the Underclass Hero video. And I mean, it's almost like a rehash of Fat Lip. There's some funny moments. There's one shot in there that I just love, but it's not Fat Lip. And then the other video was directed by some other guy, and I think it follows like a toy robot around, and then we trash a toy store in downtown LA. And even though we told the owner of the toy store that that's what we were going to do, and we bought all the stuff that we trashed, this guy just saw that happening in his store and lost it, and then pulled down the metal shutters that lock the store with us and the crew trapped inside, and called the cops and losing his mind. So that was a funny memory of that one. But
That
and
all
then
got
I think they just
resolved. Nobody went
got
to prison.
resolved. Nobody went. I mean, it was all approved. They're like, it's in the screenplay. Like, but I think, his pride and joy. It wasn't even a toy store. It was like a distribution center for toy stores. So it was filled with like piñatas and all sorts of just piles of stuff that if you owned a toy store or a convenience store, you would go there and get things for your. So just beads and marbles and whatever. We would just smash everything. He lost his mind. If you're watching this, sir, I do apologize. Anyway, so that was that one. Yeah, not my favorite record, but that's just one man's opinion.
So Screaming Bloody Murder comes out in 2011. Two singles, Screaming Bloody Murder and Baby You Don't Want to Know. These are top 15, top 30 singles in Canada. The album is a top 10 album in Canada. This gets nominated for a Grammy in 2011 for Best Hard Rock Metal Performance for the song Blood in My Eyes. How big of a deal was that, a Grammy? That's like the highest honor a band can get.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say there were three singles, I think, because we did a video for Blood in My Eyes. I don't know if it got pushed. I don't know. What was it like getting a Grammy nomination? Do I have it? I
Did
have it
Chad
right
Kroger
over there.
sweep in and get that Grammy too? No, no.
Have they won one? Have they won a Grammy?
Maybe not.
Have
It
they
was
won?
just a joke that Chad Kroger's
Have they been
owns.
nominated? Take that, Chad. What was it like? I mean, again, I don't watch the Grammys. Like it just seemed like here's the thing.
That's where
I
your
don't
grandma starts to take you seriously when there's like
my
a Grammy
grandma
nomination.
Peggy did not watch the Junos or the Grammys. She liked Glenn Miller and he died in 1945. Like I never was an award show guy. They seemed like a contrived like a promotional event veiled as an award show for industry people, right? That's what it feels like, all of them, every single one. And so I don't think any of them I ever was like, oh, great, we're going to an award show. It's my, like, people might be like, how dare you? You should be thankful. It's like, I don't watch the Grammys. So I was surprised when we got nominated and we were up against the Foo Fighters and Mastodon, and we were up for best heavy metal song, right? And I remember reading a quote from Nikki Sixx, who was like, is anybody else really confused about this year's heavy metal Grammy nomination? Like, what is Sum 41 doing on there? And we toured with Motley Crue. We know Nikki. Like he would watch us play. I think even though he would see us play metal songs, he was just like, it's the In Too Deep band. And we go to the show. The rock album we won for the Junos and the Grammy that we were nominated for best heavy metal album, neither of those were televised. The year that we were nominated and won or won, how am I saying that? The year we won and the year we were nominated, those 2 years were the years that category was knocked down from the TV special. So somebody, at the CBC or whatever station hosts the Grammys said, whatever you do, don't feature rock music. Viewership will sink like a rock. So
We need more time for the
like,
Justin Bieber nominations.
yeah, nobody cares. And so I think when we won the Juno for Chuck, we were in like a boardroom, and it was while the actual show was kind of going on or right before it. And there was a very limited amount of very disinterested music journalists in the room. Like nobody gave a shit. And so, and so I remember being like, well, thank you very much. Like there was no pomp, there was no anything. It was just like, here's your award, get the fuck out. And then for the Grammys, we got out of our okay. So here's what happened with the Grammys. By this time, we want to be a serious band and yada yada yada. So we are going to the Grammys in a boring black SUV from Derek's house. I was living in a different city and I had a kid and a baby at home. And Derek was like, you should come to my house, stay over, and then we'll all go together in the morning. And I had a baby and like, I don't want to party, I just didn't want to. I said, I'll go in the morning. Wake up in the morning and end up in one of the worst traffic jams I've ever been in my life. And what was supposed to be a 2-hour drive turned into a 6-hour, like bumper to bumper LA nightmare. So I didn't have time to get from where I lived to Derek's house. They said just go straight to the Staples Center where they're doing the Grammys. So I drive there. I'm in my pajamas essentially. My suit is in the back of the car. I'm pulling to the where the venue is, and there's paparazzi everywhere. There's security guards everywhere. I'm in a Prius with like a huge ding on the door. And the security guard guy's like, what are you doing here? Who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm nominated. And he's like, oh yeah, just come right on in. Like that's the first time that's ever happened in LA. You could be Brad Pitt, and sometimes the guy at the velvet rope will go, we're full, Brad. Like Leo's in there with the entourage. We can't fit you. And so I somehow get in there and I'm changing into my suits in the underground parking lot, go upstairs. It's like a labyrinth underneath that venue. I come up, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I have no idea where I am. I can see like there's activity over there. And there are 4 how would you call it? Like, what would you call a person who, like a sex worker? There were four sex workers. And I go to these people and I say, "Hi, can you give me directions to the Staples Center?" And they're like, "No problem. Just go down here, take a right, hang a left." And that's how I got there. I'm like,
They're
if I
very
win, I'm going to
efficient.
come.
They know the
They're
streets.
so nice. They're so nice. They get a bad rap. They're very nice. And so and that's when I jump into the SUV that the guys have just arrived in. We drive 3 feet, open the door onto the red carpet, get out, and there's a dude with a clipboard who goes, "You can't do the red carpet. You're not on the televised event."
Wow.
So we said, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you guys, no. You're not televised. You're not allowed to do the red carpet." And so we're looking at our label management. We're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I was just changing in the goddamn thing, the adventure that took us to get here. Anyway, we just went around the guy's back and then did the red carpet. So again, it was like you get nominated, but there's like a little kick in the teeth at the same time. So then we do the award show. It is not televised. Foo Fighters win, and they kind of give a speech about how it should be televised, how rock music does matter, and so forth. And that was that. And then I think Conan and Tom stayed and watched the whole ceremony, and I just left. And that was the time I went to the Grammys.
That's too funny. You mentioned your kids there. We have a fan question from JDL, who's in a Sum 41 Facebook group. His question is, do your kids know that their dad was a rock star through the early 2000s?
They sort of do now, like because my son is 14, so he's like looked it up, and so he knows. I don't think my younger son fully gets like if I said it's like a really successful like YouTuber, he'd be like, "Oh, you were like that in the early 2000s." But it's not like I said earlier, the kind of music that we listen to around the house is sort of, Chet Baker or something like that. So they're not really sure who any of these people are. We went to California last Christmas and we are hanging out with Fat Mike from No Fix. They're like, Fatty's hilarious. They have no idea that he's, one, the guy who is started the band that, influenced us to start Sum 41. He has no idea how big and influential No Effects is. He just knows Fatty's funny and he likes hanging out with him. And so he kind of knows these people, but he doesn't fully know how big it got, I guess. So
You have
not
to
really.
tell them you were the Mr. Beast of the 2000s.
Yeah, I wish. um, they've seen the In Too Deep video though, I think, because here's one thing that's funny. One day, because where we live, like where we lived in California, you don't just see kids roaming around, like young kids roaming around by themselves, like you do where we live in Australia. It's like the 80s. Like kids are on bikes and they're walking around unsupervised all over the place. And one day my son walks up the driveway and I can hear him and about six kids, and they're all singing In Too Deep. At that time, I'd never showed him In Too Deep, ever. And I was like, "How do you know that song?" And he was like, "Well, all the kids at school are singing it." And I'm like, "That was my band, right?" He was like, "You were in a band?" So they don't know. But I mean, I don't necessarily, like, I don't even really know. Like, I don't know. Were we that big of a band? I don't know. I guess. I don't think of it that way.
So I'm going to go through a quick timeline. So from 2013 to 2025 here. So in 2013 is where you announced that you're going to be stepping away from the band. A decade later, 2023, Sum 41 announces they're going to do one final album, one final tour. 2024, they release that final double album. And in this year, 2025, they're inducted into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame, recognizing their immense contributions to Canadian music and global punk rock culture. What are your thoughts on how the band's career wrapped up so beautifully with a great album that was critically acclaimed, with a big tour that was, I saw them here in Ottawa at Blues Fest where they're headlining to 40,000 people, and then the Canadian Music Hall of Fame. What are your thoughts on how everything kind of wrapped up beautifully, and it seems like the whole world embraced that nice ending.
I think it's great. I mean, listen, I left the band. It was a dark time for me, for everybody. And uh, I think I was so burnt out and emotionally, I'll just say drained that I needed to step away. And that's why my kids don't like when I also was the first one to have a kid. So, you know, especially when Derek was having all of his issues and stuff, I also had a baby at home. So it was a very, very stressful time. And unfortunately, I needed to leave, right? I needed to just, I was like, I need to focus on this kid. That's what I'm going to do. And so I stepped away from everything. I didn't want to play. I didn't want to play the drums. I didn't play the drums for 7 years. I needed a break. I needed a mental break. I needed distance. I needed time to digest what happened. I needed to think about things that, were really bothering me and make peace with them. And that took, I don't know, 10 years. Like I didn't get PTSD from the Congo, but I might have gotten PTSD from the end of the band. And it took me a really long time to come around. Um, and when we moved to Australia in 2020, I think something about the distance from what I was doing in California and then starting fresh, and it's the pandemic, there's nothing to do. I started playing the drums again, and really got into it, but not playing punk songs, like getting into different styles of music, fixing my technique, doing all the things I wish I had the maturity and patience for back in the day. You know, now, like trying to right that wrong in the sense, because there was all sorts of stuff that I wish I could have played back in the day that I just couldn't. So I wanted to do that. So I got into that. And then the band announced that they were going to, I didn't post anything. I had an Instagram. If you go to my Instagram during that period, there's a picture of a kangaroo. And then while I was practicing and relearning the instrument, I just did it by myself. And then they announced they were going to quit. And I had no idea. I just talked to Cone. He didn't know. And this announcement came out. Somebody sent it to me. I was like, oh, that's unexpected. Like Cone just told me they're releasing a double album. I had no idea. He had no idea. And my wife said, some of the fans are going to be bummed. Why don't you go and play a song? So I went and I played like Still Waiting for the first time in forever. And I just said, hey, I'm sorry to hear the news. They had a good run. Here's this song. And it got a great response. And so that's when I started posting things to Instagram for and sort of dipping my toe into that world. And people kept saying, do a YouTube. And I kept putting it off because I was like, oh, I'm busy doing other stuff or whatever. And then, eventually I started doing that. And that's become pretty successful. And that's got a great response. And so, even though I wasn't there for the final shows, which is awesome that they did that. I'm happy that that's how it ended for them. I've also been able to join in my own way from home and relive some of these things that I ignored for so long. I didn't talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to think about it. And to be frank, I mean, the ending was so shitty and awful that it tainted everything that came before it for the longest time. And then I finally got to the point where I was like, that's not like that bad part is which was not nothing. I mean, it was something. But so much of the other stuff was special and fun, and I can't let that one experience cloud the whole thing. And so I've had to do my own journey of coming all the way around where I can look at all that stuff and be like, that was awesome that we got to do that. Like, good work. So to the guys, fuck yeah. I can't believe that happened, Like it's crazy that's what our from 15 or whatever until, well, for them, mid 40s, for me, mid 30s. It was wild that's what happened. So I really feel honored that I was able to be a part of something that so many people, I get so many emails all the time, like this album changed my life or this song got me through that or whatever. Like that thing was the funniest thing I ever saw in my life. Like that's the stuff I look back on. I go, yeah, hell yeah, that was rad. So that's how I feel about the whole thing. I'm glad that I'm not bitter about anything. Like I'm just like, that was great. And if we can all enjoy the history of it together, then that's even better.
So we had a fan question sent in here. You kind of answered it already, but this is from Cam Brio on Instagram. His question is, what inspired you to start the YouTube channel and get back on the drums? So you just kind of answered that, but I want to give him a shout out for taking the time to send in a question.
Well, the thing that inspired me though was getting into different styles of music. I remember hearing like jazz and thinking, I wish I could play like that. And then I was like, wait a minute, why can't I play with that? Like, why can't people learn it? Why can't I learn it? So I started taking jazz lessons, and slowly that magic, like you watch those guys play, and it's like a magic trick. You're like, how did he just pull that out of his ass so effortlessly? How does it sound so smooth while still being so technical? If you just chip away at it a little bit every day for a few years, eventually you start to see results. And I was like I'm a better drummer now than I was then, like way better. And I'm not saying that like I'm awesome. What I'm saying is, if you are a musician or an artist or in anything, if you just practice consistently, you will get better. And there's an approach you can take that will get you there. And the funny thing about getting better is that the better you get, the worse you realize you are, because it unlocks something that you weren't even capable of imagining. You're like, oh, like that thing that now I realize is like 2 years of practice. But I think when I was younger, I fell in love with the result. I want to have fast hands. Like I need to be fast. Whereas now I like learning new things, right? Like I'm constantly trying to find a new thing to learn. And if you can get into that, especially for musicians, you'll get good. You will get better. You'll be able to do all the crazy shit your favorite person does. It just takes time. And when I'm not touring all the time, I have time. That's the thing. When you're on tour, you play 2 hours a day. You don't want to practice a lot. And when you go home, you're like, I need a break. But because I'm not touring, what I've fallen in love with is practicing and learning things.
So I wanted to give one final shout out to your YouTube channel. I've watched a ton of videos on there. The videos are high quality, they're entertaining. You get a lot of behind the scenes stories about Sum 41. You have over 60,000 subscribers, so that's a lot of success on YouTube in a short period of time. So go check it out, Stevo 32 Drums on YouTube. I have just a couple questions before we wrap up here. When you look back on your life and career, what are you most proud of and what are you most grateful for?
Well, I'm most grateful for the experience. I'm like I've said already, it's one like it's a 1 in a million, you know, dart throw, and we hit the bullseye. So that was great, and that is a combination of things. I mean, it is the right label, the right external forces, but ultimately, none of that would have worked. None of that would have worked if it wasn't the right guys. So I'm grateful at least for that as well. Like that bond, particularly in the early years, and the connection and the relationship of how we played off each other, and all of our talents were appreciated and utilized. That was great. And that's why it worked, I think. That's why it worked versus a band with no personality and didn't have great songs, or at least marketable songs. I know some people don't think our songs are great, but you know what I mean. That was special. What was the other question?
What you're most proud of and most grateful for from your career?
Well, that was grateful. So grateful is the experience and the relationships that we made. Because, and then we ended up making great friends with people that inspired us. Fat Mike introduced me to my wife. Like the the domino effect going that way is an unforeseen outcome. Great news for me, bad news for my wife, but whatever. She's stuck now. And then you know, I guess that's what I'm grateful for. And what am I proud of? I mean, I'm proud of, all of it, really, even the stuff that didn't work, because it's actually the stuff that doesn't work that helps you. We're primed to look for bad things. And so if you can look at the thing that went wrong and learn from it and build off of that, you will grow. I'm proud of the videos. I think those are hilarious. I'm proud of some of the records. I'm proud that we got better as we went on. Our musicianship improved, the songwriting improved, the production improved. Like you can see a upward trajectory of improvement, and I think that is something to be proud of. So all those things, and having great fans, all that stuff, having people who've stuck with us for decades now, awesome. All of it's been great. Even the bad stuff, that's just like that's every band. You just have to accept it, right? But don't let it cloud the whole experience, because on the whole, the experience was phenomenal.